Several councils in England declaring bankruptcy. The government's been told it must provide billions of pounds more to protect local authorities or risk pushing some services to breaking point. Some councils are being forced to consider selling off property, including community centres and historic sites, to cover their debts. So we thought we would speak to Richard Macrae, leader of the Broxtowe Independent Group, councillor for Nottingham. Been a councillor for 10 years, I believe. Richard, good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. What's your reaction to councils potentially selling off listed buildings?
It's quite scary. I mean, we've got an amazing history in Stapleford. We've got great, sorry, I said Stapleford, in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. We've got places like Wollerton Hall. We've got Nottingham Castle, and it's quite scary. These places, you know, they could end up being sold. I'm not saying they are, because I don't know. I'm not on the city council, and I'm glad I'm not. But then again, perhaps if I was, I'd help a bit more. But I think it's sad that there's a possibility of these things happening because it destroys the history. And I think where I represent at Broxtowe Borough Council, we're quite lucky because we're trying to bring our buildings back into use, and we're not selling them. And I think we've got to give credit to people like Milan Radulovic, who's the leader of the council, for his leadership, and also Councillor Greg Marshall, who looks after finances. But at the same time, let's remember the officers that do the work in the background. So we're quite lucky that we're not getting rid of anything, and we're trying to bring things back into use. And I just think it's sad that other places can't do the same.
Some councils, it has to be said, are in a dire strait, Nottingham included. Is it worth selling off these buildings in order to try to get the councils back in some sort of sound financial position?
I mean, me personally, I think they shouldn't have got like that in the first place, and there's a little bit of mismanagement to blame there with people. But, you know, people keep voting them back in again, which absolutely baffles me, especially in the city. But then there's also, we've got to blame central government because they keep making cuts and they're sending less and less money to the, you know, your district councils and stuff like that do stuff locally. And I think it's important that more money is sent to the local districts because we're the people that live in these areas. We represent the people. We know what they want. We don't get everything right all the time. But I'm going to quote Tupac here, and I'm going to say, you know, they've always got money for wars, but they've never got money to feed the poor. I think we need to look at the way that we're doing stuff, and we need to be better representing the people. So, yeah, the government need to step up and send more money to us. And it's just really sad if things have got to be sold, because it worries me what's going to happen to them. You know, we can't keep building student flats in Nottingham city centre. It's not fair. What about the people that want to live there? But I also think that it just shows how good a council we are at Broxtowe, because we're not having to do that.
Yeah, I understand that. But if the councils are saying their only option is to sell these public assets, I suppose one has to listen to them, unless, of course, the government should step in and help. What do you think?
Well, again, I say the government should step in and help, because the government's the ones that's got, you know, they've got the bigger purses, haven't they? And a lot of the money they're getting, it is coming from local people paying into it. So they should be giving some back. They can't keep spending it on areas because it's favoured by their political parties, and other areas, if you're not the same as government, you're not getting the funding. And it's not right. We should all be treated the same. And, you know,
I suppose the other way of looking at that is mismanagement by local councils is not the government's fault.
No, that's not at all. And I do think in the city centre, there is an element of mismanagement of funding. You can look at lots of mistakes they've made. Millions of pounds, multi-millions of pounds have been wasted on absolute rubbish. And that's not fair. But that's I said earlier, I don't understand why people keep voting in the same people when they're making so many mistakes. You know, people need to look at who they're actually voting for and get some people in that care about the area. They're going to do the best and make sure this isn't happening. I say we're not doing it in Broxtowe. We're all listening to people. We're all trying to do what we can to make it a better place for everybody. I just wish the city would be the same. But if they've got to sell these buildings to keep paying the bills, it looks like they're going to have to. But then the concern is who's going to buy them, what they're going to use them for, because it could be for the better, couldn't it?
Well, let's see what happens. It's good to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
No, my pleasure. You take care.
You too. Dozens of